Hi, everybody. Welcome to the Inside Out Alignment podcast. Hope you're doing well. This is episode 8, and today we have with us Wade Allen. Wade, how are you doing today?
Doing great. Excited to be on the show.
Awesome. Listen, let me tell you a little bit about Wade. So Wade Allen is the Chief Digital Officer at Brinker International, where he oversees culinary innovation, operations, digital strategy and development, and off-premise. His team develops products in ways that allow Brinker to leverage social, economic, and technological changes that are disrupting the restaurant industry for the good of Brinker's guests, team members, and shareholders. Wade also, by the way, is someone that I've been following on LinkedIn and have been following his posts. And Wade is someone very motivated, very driven with a lot of grit and resilience and tenacity. And he talks about that. He demonstrates his workouts. He publicizes his workouts. And I thought, who better to speak to grit and resilience than Wade? So Wade, welcome aboard.
Thanks, Mike. Good to be here.
Great. All right. So before we get started, smash the like button, subscribe to this channel, and share this video with your friends. So let's get started. All right, Wade. So like I said on LinkedIn, you post a lot about your daily workouts, your commitments. There's always an inspirational quote about that theme of resilience and never giving up. Tell us a little bit about how that kind of came to be for you and why you're doing that and kind of making a public record of your grit.
It started with me when I was pretty young. Parents instilled in me about hard work, dedication, never quitting. There have been multiple experiences in my life where I've struggled at times, both mentally and physically, and even in career. And I think there's been just a moment where there's been a handful of people who have reached down and picked me up and helped me kind of dust myself off through that time. And so I think I felt like I was moving myself into a career and in a position where I was mentally strong and emotionally capable of helping others. And I needed a platform, and because my voice wasn't loud enough on Twitter, it wasn't loud enough in other places. And I felt like a lot of the connections I had was in LinkedIn and in the work environment. And I just felt like that was the medium I chose to kind of lean into. And so every morning I the alarm goes off at 5:10 and I'm out of the rack and the workout starts at 5:45 and muscle through it. And then that sets the tone for the day with a motivational quote and a drive to succeed that day. And that's just kind of been the routine.
That's great. And we'll talk a little bit about that as we get into the discussion about routine and goals and kind of making this subconscious like habits. Like this is just now a habit. You're the type of person who, therefore you're not thinking about it. But so in preparation for this interview, I reread Angela Duckworth's book, Grit. Have you read that by chance?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
And then I've watched probably, 50 YouTube clips on her talking more and more about it. So she'll talk about grit is having like two components, one being talent and one being effort, but effort counts twice, right? And she'll say talent times effort equals skill, skill times effort equals achievement, right? And so talent is used twice. So when you think about this idea, whether certainly talent is important, but effort matters more. Tell me how that lands with you in terms of grit and just one having talent, but really having to put in more of the effort and why that correlates to grit.
Yeah, as you spoke about it and I thought about it, we're all blessed with some talent. We all have things that can contribute in some way, but it really comes down to, are you willing to put in the time, the work, and the effort? I've seen so many people in my life and just had such admiration for people in my life that have not necessarily been blessed with the highest IQ or the most, they weren't the best athlete, but their work ethic and they're willing to grind and never quit and never give up to accomplish the task. Like that for me is just, I even now get emotional and get kind of inspired by that willingness to just refuse to accept defeat. And I think that counts, like that book talks about, it's all about the double the effort, right? The effort is what really matters to get you there. Talent gets you so far, but whether it's Nick Saban or whether it's any other coach, if you hear them speak, they will tell you people have choices. And those choices really come down to how hard are you willing to work to get to be, get to accomplish and excel and be the best on the field. And I love that. I do think that's true. I don't think everybody has the whole package, but it really comes down to how hard you're willing to dig in and work.
Are you familiar with Will Smith's treadmill quote?
I don't know if I've heard that.
All right, let me do this real quick. I'm going to share my screen.
The only thing that I see that is distinctly different about me is I'm not afraid to die on a treadmill. But I will run. You would not be outworked. I will not be outworked, right? Period. You know, you might have more talent than me. You might be smarter than me. You might be sexier than me. You might be all of those things. You got it on me in 9 categories. But if we get on the treadmill together, right? There's 2 things. You're getting off first, or I'm going to die. It's really that simple.
I love that. That is so motivational to me. Never quit, right?
And it's, and he'll say, he says, I am not the most talented. And I think we all have people in our lives that we know aren't necessarily the most talented, like left brain, we call it left brain, because there's elements of kind of EQ and IQ, and then this resiliency muscle, this ability to just outwork. And ultimately that's the controllable, right? So what we're talking about here is controlling the controllables and probably emphasizing process over outcome. So do you want to maybe speak to that?
Yeah, I mean, I think, and I'll start back for me when I was younger. Physically, I was behind growing up. I was smaller. I really wanted to play high school football. It was my dream from a young kid. Really wanted to be there, but I was a late bloomer. Really didn't get my growth and size until late into my junior year. And I remember as a little guy, I was not physically capable to compete with a lot of these other players, but I was unwilling to ever quit. It didn't, that movie Rudy about getting knocked into the dirt over and over again and never quitting. That kind of helped me establish who I was going to be. And when I got to college, it gave me the confidence to go out for the rugby team and make an attempt to play rugby at BYU. And that would have never been a realistic possibility as a sophomore, junior in high school, because I was, a third of the size of the rest of the guys. But it set a tone for me about, I can control what only I can control. I can't control my growth, but I can control learning the game, understanding, watching closely, watching when people come out of their breaks to jump on an interception, right? Being smart on the field so you don't get, run over by an offensive tackle when there's a play downfield. Just these things that kind of set the tone for all things. And I've translated that also into my life. I'm not the smartest guy, but when it comes to emotional IQ or social IQ, I feel like that's a place where I can really thrive because I can read the room. I can understand people. I can make connections. I can, understand where business is going as opposed to having to know everything about the P&L or understanding, the details of net contribution or cash flows, right? I can do that, but I'm not the best at it. Where I really am good is where I think the world's going to go from a business standpoint. And that set the tone for me. And I firmly believe that you got to be able to control the things you can control. The things you can't, it's just finding ways around the proverbial mountain that you have to climb, right?
Yeah, exactly. And so when I hear you speak about that, I think growth mindset versus fixed mindset. And Carol Dweck wrote a book on mindset and talks about growth mindset. So what's growth mindset? Growth mindset is basically the belief in yourself that you can continue developing as a person, whether it's skills, talents, knowledge, what have you, that the pie is always growing. Whereas if it's a fixed mindset, that's kind of, well, this is the way I was born, therefore can't do anything. And therefore I'm problem focused, not solution focused. So talk to me about your perspective on growth mindset and solution focus versus problem focus.
Well, I think humility comes into play here in a big way, which is the ability to constantly learn and being willing to take feedback. All of us struggle with it as people. As we get to a place in our career, we grow and we think that we know, and somebody gives us some feedback and we're like, well, that's just your opinion or your perspective. But I think what I've tried to learn, and I'm not perfect at it, Mike, by any means, but what I am learning is when you ask for feedback or when you get feedback, drop the defensive position, listen intently, and be humble enough to learn, to change, and to grow. I think that has, that continues to benefit me in a lot. So recently I had a conversation with a couple of individuals, very senior people who are no longer necessarily in our company, but had been kind of I'll call them emeritus status, right? CEOs and presidents that had moved on. And in these discussions, it was easy for me to say, they're not in the business. They don't know what's going on. They're retired and unaware. But I stopped for a minute, dropped the defense, and opened the proverbial capture point to listen in a humble way on what are they telling me, and trying to gather nuggets to improve every single day. I think that growth mindset is everything. If you're unwilling to change, if you're unwilling to learn or be unwilling to be humble enough to move forward, you'll create your own limit. And then you'll be stuck in that battle of never learning and never moving forward. That's what sparked when you were talking about that. I think it's critically for all humans to have that to grow and move forward.
Yeah, super insightful. And I think, we can look at generations. I saw one of your posts recently, and, I think you talked about never giving up, and younger generation, or not even younger generation, just a subset of people who maybe just haven't found a way to build that resilience muscle. And I feel like part of that is just at some point in their lives, they just focused on or didn't allow themselves to fail enough. Right. Or it was fail, stop, not fail, learn, adapt. And I had a post recently that talked about that. So touch a little bit about how important failure is, obstacles, like even for our kids. Maybe we can even transition the conversation to, we're both parents. Like, I know one thing with our kids is I'm throwing as many obstacles in front of them as I can. I want them to fail, but I want them also to then get back up, learn, adapt, have a conversation, ask for some insight, and keep going. So talk to me about that.
Yeah, it is near and dear to my heart. And as a parent, I wish I was better at it. Watching your kids fail is incredibly painful. And I think as parents, we just naturally try to move obstacles out of the way because we don't want them to have a hard, painful existence. That is the worst thing we can do as parents, because we have to learn through stumbles. It's just like when you're teaching a toddler to walk. A couple of my kids learned to walk pretty early, 8 months, 7 months, 9 months. And we all know little people are not smart enough to learn to walk at that age because they can't gauge the height of tables and doors and doorways and stuff. And so many bumps and bruises and bloody noses and bangs on the head of just doing that. But it's through that process, and I use that as an example, but it's through that kind of infant process of learning to walk and bumping that they figure out balance and gauging height and knowing how to navigate on their feet. It's no difference when we get to adulthood. And I've learned, and I have 4 kids, so it took me a while. I'll say my younger ones are probably better at learning how to fail and learn from it than my older 2, but they're learning now hey, you fail. It's okay. Life's about failure. It's what you do now that matters. Pick yourself up, dust yourself off, try again. I have an oldest son, and I'll embarrass him if he hears this, but he went to college right during COVID, and he didn't go well. Okay? He failed some classes and has had to retake several chemistry and calculus classes a couple of times. But it's been the most interesting lesson to watch him progress through this each time. The first time he bombed it, failed it. The second time he got a C-, but he got to get a C to pass for the major. Third time in, he's committed, and he is not going to get anything less than a C, and he's focused on getting A's and B's. But I think that's that lesson in life. And the younger generations, I made that post not too long ago because this constant drumbeat from this generation about quiet quitting and giving up, and just if things are hard, then you don't have to do it anymore, and you deserve better. And the only truth in all of that, in my opinion, is that you do deserve better. And to get better, to be better, to actually have something better means you have to grind through the hard moments and learn from that. Else you'll continue to repeat that lesson, forever.
Yep. And so Angela Duckworth talked about obstacles. She's conducted some studies that show what's helpful for the younger generation when they experience an obstacle is to ask themselves, what are the possible solutions, as small to big, and just pick the smallest and just find some success. And I just want to share my screen real quick one more time.
Switch.
So the formula, right? Effort, not like a ton of work, not a bunch of, not this big thing you can't, it's effort. And effort can be getting out of bed to go drink a glass of water. That's effort. That's something, right? Now, this may be setting the bar low, but this is where we build, right? So effort, repetition, do that consistently, you get a small win. Then you start building momentum, and progression's the name of the game. I see you, right? You're a progression maniac. You're always about progressing, getting better than you were yesterday. And then, when you do things over and over, you get competent. And my belief, the byproduct of competence is authentic confidence. And when you're authentically confident, you're more likely to get results in life. So I just wanted to kind of call out that formula.
I've never seen that. That's actually really cool.
That was just, you talk to enough people and you do enough research and you start small, because to me, it's always about wherever you are, you've got to start somewhere. You don't need to start where I am or where you are. We've been doing this for years and decades. So you got to start somewhere, find your success, build on that. I'm the type of person who, it's like me, right? You're rebuilding self-image. This is constantly building up of the self-image. I'm the type of person who, and just not letting that negative self-talk come into play. And so I want to transition into self-talk. I'd be really curious if you could just be candid and honest, like, what does self-talk sound like for you? Maybe what did it sound like in a previous life when you were younger, as you were maturing and experiencing life? And what is it like today?
I think all of us have an advocate and a critic. It's just in our head. Anybody who tells you otherwise is not being honest. So there's always the voice to tell you to quit, and there's always the voice that can tell you to, I'm going to die on this treadmill. Right? Younger, I had a very personal experience when I was about 19 years old that really rocked me to the point of where I kind of stopped functioning. I couldn't attend school. I couldn't really have a social life. There was some counseling involved. It was for me, it was one of those massive mountains in life that was a major turning point. And it could have led to two roads. It could have led to the continued road of listening to the critic and always being self-deprecating and self-defeating and blaming the world. Or it could have led to where I believe I am now, which is, it doesn't matter the height of the mountain or what's in front of me, I'm going to accomplish it. And in that moment, a very dark moment, as I went through that, there were a few things that kept me, that drove me to the path that I'm on today. Obviously, my parents, obviously there's a spiritual component to that. There was some assistance from a mental standpoint from some doctors and some psychiatrists and sociologists. But in the end, the voice that told me, that loud voice that was super loud as the critic has never gone away. And I think that people believe that somehow you can crowd out that voice and it'll always be gone. Every day when I wake up at 5:10, the first voice that is the loudest is the critic to tell me to say, hit the snooze button, lay down. It doesn't matter. You've worked hard all week. Just take it easy. And it's now become, through routine and repetition, that my advocate shouts back and now just waits for the critic to say you can't do it or we should lay down, and says that's our cue, and you're immediately on your feet and you're doing your job. And so it's amazing how over life and those moments in life that set the tone to listen to the advocate and ignore the critic. So I think the point I'm trying to make is that no one ever gets rid of these voices. They're always there. It's how you mentally decide to handle and just and move your life forward listening to these two voices.
Yeah. So that critic is the subconscious, right? And the subconscious is focused on one thing, and that's survival. And one way you can survive is to just do whatever you did the day before, or as little as possible, because you're alive. So whatever little you did yesterday, that's all the subconscious. It's like a lazy uncle that just sits in the recliner and says, you don't have to do anything, just survive. The subconscious is not worried about optimization, right? Optimization is a conscious, creative decision. You and I right now are having a conscious, creative dialogue. We are talking about being better than we were yesterday. We're talking about growth mindset. This is conscious. And when you keep having more of these conversations, and this ultimately is why I feel like I've been called to do this podcast, is I want to facilitate more growth mindset conversations. I want to share what little I've learned in my 54 years about how I think I've become a better version of myself. And I think the way you can think about that critic is the subconscious is your dutiful servant. It will do whatever you tell it. So if you start telling it more consistently, and you talked about it, and you said routine and habit, when your inner dialogue, when the self-image conversation you have is, I'm the type of person who, it's like me too, and you keep doing that, at some point, the subconscious says, all right, I get it. In this area, you can be the gym rat that you are, right? You are crazy, go for it. But it takes intention, awareness, repetition, consistency, positive. How many attaboys get ruined by one criticism? I heard 20 attaboys for one criticism. And that's not for our kids. That's for us. It's so easy for us to shrink our self-image with, like you said, that inner critic. So I feel like part of the formula that's worked for me and my clients is just more often constant affirmations and consistent self-image statements really matter. You keep building it up so that time when you're like, oh, you idiot, why did you do that? Like, boom, because boom, you shrink and you start over. Anyway, let's talk about goal setting. So, I really believe we are goal striving individuals as an entity, as a species. Tell me a little bit about how you view goals and how important they are into just finding success and happiness and continuing on that path of progression.
It's been a part of my life since I was a young kid. I talked about not playing football when I was a kid. I ended up running cross country with my sister, who was an amazing athlete and an all-state, all-American. And so I saw how she operated. And, as a young kid, you're just trying to find your way. And I watched her really intently. And she would place a goal. She would literally create an artwork or an image or a word, and she would place it in her purview or in her physical view all the time. And I couldn't figure this out as a young kid going through junior high and high school. And I'm looking at my older sister thinking, why does she have that stupid word on her wall? Or what is she doing? And it didn't mean anything to anybody else until you asked her what it meant. It meant something to her, and she knew what it meant. And here's a young lady who won state in the state of Utah cross country, was ranked internationally, had scholarships to 70 different D1 schools, got a 4.0, full ride to the school of her choice academically. And I just tried to crack into her head, and it was all about goal setting. And it didn't click then, but I had it in the back of my mind as I kind of went through life. And there was a point at which, and it didn't even just, it wasn't a flip the switch. It was just a gradual element. And I started to realize that seems to be the way that we succeed. And now it's become a part of all of my life, in my career, in my spirituality, in how I actually show up in social settings. It's driven how I raise my children. Now, I am not perfect at helping my kids set those goals. And that's somewhere I need to continue to work. That's another element. But I've been the example for them, I think, on setting goals, which is, 50% of the battle is showing them the example of how to follow. But I do believe, along with what you said, without a goal, we're just floating. Without an end state, without something we're trying to achieve and accomplish, we're just kind of floating around, being pushed to wherever we'll go with the wind. When you accomplish goals, even small ones, like you said, it builds confidence, it sets the tone for the next goal, right? And it starts to become, if you can make it a habit, it starts to become addictive of, hey, I can reach the next goal, I can accomplish the next goal. And you look back and see all the progress that you've made because you've reached each one of those milestones.
Yeah. So full disclosure, years ago, before kids, I really enjoyed golf. And so I actually went to a sports hypnotist for about 6 months. All right. Some people would think that's crazy, but I tell you right now, one of the things he told me to do, and I'll explain to the why, is just like your sister did, is find a word or phrase and put it all around the house so that you keep seeing this phrase. And part of why you do that, for me, it was stripe it. So it was my drive, stripe the drive, right? And so pink cards all over the place, mirrors, kitchen, bathroom, monitor. And all I kept seeing was stripe it, stripe it. Have you ever heard of the reticular activating system, the RAS?
I've not heard that.
Okay, so that is basically this part of our psychology that what we focus on, we attract in our lives. It's kind of a law of attraction, but it's actually a scientific explanation for it. So if I'm seeing stripe it and that's in my mind, thinking about it consistently, I'm going to find ways to actually materialize that because it's front of mind, front of center. It's an alignment of self-image. It's like me. So I could say even better, it's like me to stripe it. I'm the type of person who stripes it. Getting back to the sports hypnotist, when I smell grass, it's like me to stripe it. He would go through all the senses. And when you're really calm and you're really suggestive, like this stuff works. And I've interviewed a couple professional golfers and golf coaches, and they'll tell you, they don't say they go to sports hypnotists, but when I talk to them, something's going on where they're understanding this subconscious element. So I have to tell you, your sister has been onto something that I think the science is proving out is what you focus on, you become, and what you repeat, you become. It's like you to become.
That's so amazing. And just talking about it, I wear bracelets that say never give up and never quit, right? It's become part of me. And you're exactly right. I didn't know the science behind it. I just saw examples of what my sister did. And now subconsciously, I've gotten a hold of these words and terminology, and I use them, and it becomes everything in my life. And it becomes the motivation for me to look at the world, right? Again, through that whole lens of everything that I do. But that's such an interesting, that story about that golf is so interesting about Stripe It. That's exactly what's happening today in my life, of thinking about never going to quit, never going to get up, accomplish the goal at all costs kind of thing.
Yep. And then real quick, just kind of bringing this all together, I've said you don't get in life what you want or what you deserve. You get your subconscious habits. So what you've done for most of your life is you've done things at such a level that they are becoming habits. And I would say your success is directly connected to your subconscious habits. You're the type of person who, fill in the blank. You do all these things oftentimes subconsciously. 95% of our lives are subconscious, by the way. So before we wrap up, please smash that like button, subscribe to this channel, and share this video with your friends. Wade, this has been such an enjoyable conversation. These are the conversations I want to have more of in my life. You're the type of person I want to be around more in my life as often as possible. So I'm just going to put that out to the universe. I hope this is the start of something between you and I. have no idea what it's going to look like in months or years down the road, but I hope this was the genesis. So with all that in mind, we've talked about a lot. You've experienced a lot in your life. If there's one high level idea, concept, suggestion you would give to people as they're going through their lives, and in the spirit of grit, resilience, tenacity, never giving up, just speak to them and motivate them or encourage them, what would you share with them?
I think there's two things. The first one is every long journey, every success story starts with the first step. I've seen and watched many people who just feel overwhelmed and just buried in life, and they just can't get going. And the plea to them is you've just got to take one step, even if it's a workout, if it's picking yourself up from a failure, if it's trying to find love again, whatever that is. You just have to take the first step. And I think when people are willing to take a step and then just focus on that one day, and then the next day, and then the next day, in just a short order of time, they start to form habits, and those habits change their life. So that's the one thing. And then the second thing is what I tell my kids all the time, which is just never give up. Life does not care about you. It does not care who you are. It will continue to throw punches. And most of the time, those punches are landed. It's what you do now. And I say now, after the failure happens, after you receive the punch, to move forward, because that's what defines us, is what happens after we fail. And I think my kids get tired of hearing that, but I will tell you, I believe that small statement will motivate them and deliver more success in their life than anything else anybody can tell them. It's what I do now that matters. This feeling's mutual. I hope you can help me with my golf game at some point. It's not great, but if I can stripe it, then maybe that's the way I can get there with success.
Well said, Wade. And I think you tie into another belief I have about always taking care of your future self, right? We're doing things now that our future self is going to thank us for. And I think you've articulated that wonderfully. So Wade, it was a pleasure to talk to you. Great insights. And hopefully we'll do this again, and we'll pick another topic and have as much engagement as we did.
Thanks, man. It was great. Appreciate it.
Take care, Wade.
Bye-bye.